25 most hated Hollywood stars in history. Hollywood sells us a lie that fame equals respect, that talent guarantees redemption. But history tells a darker story. Some of the most powerful names in entertainment didn't fall because they failed. They fell because the public finally stopped forgiving. Scandal, arrogance, abuse, silence, and privilege turned icons into enemies. These are not rumors. These are reputations rewritten in real time. As you watch, ask yourself, who truly deserves forgiveness and who was protected for far too long? Subscribe, like, and comment below. This is Black Excellence Legends, where uncomfortable truths refuse to stay hidden. Jaden Smith. Jaden Smith entered Hollywood with advantages most aspiring actors never experience. Born in 1998 to Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, he was introduced to global audiences at age 8 in The Pursuit of Happiness, a performance that earned genuine praise and sympathy. In 2010, the Karate Kid remake grossed over $350 million worldwide, positioning Jaden as a rising star with both commercial and emotional appeal. The backlash came later, not from failure, but from perception. As Jaden grew older, his public identity shifted away from acting toward philosophy, fashion, and social commentary. His social media posts, often abstract reflections on education, time, and reality, were intended as introspective but widely interpreted as pretentious. In an industry already criticized for nepotism, Jaden became a lightning rod. Critics labeled him the embodiment of privilege, presenting itself as enlightenment. Unlike many young stars, Jaden actively distanced himself from traditional Hollywood pathways. He questioned formal schooling, rejected conventional celebrity norms, and framed himself as intellectually misunderstood. For supporters, this independence signaled creativity. For detractors, it felt performative. The gap between intention and reception widened quickly. Jaden's ventures into music and fashion further divided opinion. While his albums received mixed reviews, his fashion choices, such as wearing skirts at major events, sparked cultural conversations that often overshadowed his work. Instead of being discussed as an artist, he became a symbol of inherited opportunity, curated eccentricity, and perceived self-importance. Importantly, Jaden Smith has not been involved in criminal scandals, abuse allegations, or illegal conduct. The resentment surrounding him is cultural, not judicial. He represents a modern form of backlash, where visibility without struggle is treated as offense. In the court of public opinion, Jaden Smith's greatest controversy is not what he did wrong, but what many believe he never had to earn. And in Hollywood, that alone can be enough to make admiration turn into disdain. Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton did not invent celebrity culture, but she became its most visible symbol. Born into one of America's wealthiest families, Hilton entered public life in the early 2000s as a tabloid fixture rather than a performer. Her reality series, The Simple Life, transformed her into a global name, built almost entirely on persona, privilege, excess, and detachment from ordinary life. For a time, audiences were fascinated. Then fascination curdled into resentment. Much of the backlash stemmed from perception. Paris was seen as famous without contribution, a walking headline in an era before social media normalized that model. Her leaked sex tape in 2003 intensified scrutiny, turning her into both a target of ridicule and a lightning rod for debates about morality, exploitation, and accountability. Rather than disappearing, Hilton remained omnipresent. Clubs, talk shows, paparazzi, fueling the belief that attention itself was her only currency. Critics accused her of shallow commentary, reckless behavior, and embodying everything wrong with Hollywood excess. Arrests for DUI and jail time reinforced that image. To many viewers, Paris Hilton represented a decline in cultural standards, where notoriety replaced achievement. Over time, Hilton quietly built a business empire spanning fragrances, fashion, and DJ performances, reportedly earning hundreds of millions of dollars. Yet public opinion lagged behind reality. Even as narratives shifted toward recognizing her as an early architect of influencer culture, the resentment never fully disappeared. Paris Hilton's place among Hollywood's most hated figures is not rooted in crime or abuse, but in symbolism. She became the face of fame without effort, whether fair or not. In an industry obsessed with merit, Paris Hilton was punished not for what she did, but for what she represented. Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian's rise reshaped modern celebrity, and that transformation came at a cost. Her entry into public consciousness followed the release of a private sex tape in 2007, a moment that permanently framed her image. From that controversy emerged Keeping Up with the Kardashians, a reality series that turned personal exposure into a commercial engine. For supporters, it was strategic brilliance. For critics, it was calculated exploitation. Kim's influence expanded rapidly. Social media became her primary platform, where curated images of beauty, luxury, and control defined a new standard of visibility. Her ventures into cosmetics, shapewear, and branding proved enormously successful. Yet with success came backlash. She was repeatedly accused of lacking talent, promoting unrealistic beauty ideals, and reducing fame to aesthetics and attention management. Unlike traditional stars, Kim did not rely on acting or music to justify her platform. That distinction fueled disdain. To detractors, she symbolized manufactured relevance, celebrity sustained through controversy, relationships, and constant self-promotion. Each high-profile marriage, public breakup, or viral moment reinforced the belief that her life itself was content, stripped of authenticity. Kim has since pursued legal studies and advocated for criminal justice reform, efforts praised by some and dismissed by others as performative. The divide never closed. Admiration and hostility coexist, but respect remains elusive in many circles. Kim Kardashian is hated not because she failed, but because she succeeded by rewriting the rules. She exposed how fame could be engineered, monetized, and scaled without traditional gatekeepers. In doing so, she became proof that Hollywood no longer decides who matters. And for many, that truth is unforgivable. Kris Jenner. Kris Jenner is rarely in front of the camera for long. Yet few figures have shaped modern celebrity culture more aggressively. Born in 1955, she transformed her family into one of the most powerful brands in entertainment history. As the self-appointed momager, Jenner oversaw every contract, appearance, and narrative surrounding her children, redefining what it meant to manufacture fame in the digital age. To admirers, Kris Jenner is a marketing mastermind. She turned a reality television show into a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem spanning fashion, beauty, endorsements, and social media dominance. But to critics, she represents something far darker. A parent willing to commodify private lives for profit. The most persistent accusation follows her handling of Kim Kardashian's leaked sex tape in 2007. Rather than shielding her daughter from public humiliation, Jenner was accused of strategically allowing the scandal to fuel attention, a claim she has repeatedly denied. Over the years, viewers have described her on-screen persona as calculating, emotionally distant, and relentlessly transactional. Family conflicts, breakdowns, and relationships became content. For many, the line between support and exploitation felt deliberately blurred. Kris Jenner came to embody a version of Hollywood where morality is secondary to branding and loyalty is measured in revenue. Despite intense backlash, Jenner remains unapologetic. She presents success as justification, arguing that control is protection in an unforgiving industry. Yet the hatred persists because she symbolizes a system where fame is engineered rather than earned. Kris Jenner is disliked not for lack of intelligence, but for her effectiveness. She proved that in Hollywood, power does not need talent, it needs strategy. And for those who believe family should never be a business, that lesson remains deeply uncomfortable. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is one of the most successful actors in cinematic history. With a career spanning over 4 decades, his films have grossed more than $11 billion worldwide, and franchises like Mission Impossible cemented his status as a global icon. On screen, Cruise's precision, discipline, and relentless commitment. Off-screen, his image is far more divisive. The turning point came not from a film, but from behavior. Cruise's public association with the Church of Scientology gradually transformed admiration into suspicion. His 2005 appearance on The Oprah Winfrey Show, where he jumped on a couch declaring love for Katie Holmes, became a cultural moment, widely mocked and deeply unsettling to audiences who had never seen that side of him. Criticism intensified as Cruise publicly defended Scientology, dismissing psychiatry and mental health treatment in interviews. Former members of the church accused it of manipulation and abuse, and Cruise's unwavering loyalty placed him at the center of that controversy. Allegations that his personal relationships were tightly controlled, particularly during his marriage to Holmes, further damaged his reputation, though Cruise has denied wrongdoing. Despite this, his professional discipline never wavered. He continued performing his own stunts, pushing physical limits, and delivering box office success well into his 60s. Yet trust did not return. For many viewers, Cruise became less an actor and more a symbol of celebrity devotion to ideology. Tom Cruise is hated not because of failure, but because his brilliance exists alongside discomfort. He represents a rare paradox, undeniable excellence paired with an off-screen persona that makes audiences uneasy. In Hollywood, that unease can linger longer than applause. Will Smith. For more than 3 decades, Will Smith represented something rare in Hollywood: universal approval. From the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to box office juggernauts like Men in Black, Independence Day, and The Pursuit of Happiness, Smith built a career on charm, humor, and emotional accessibility. He was the star studios trusted, parents admired, and audiences rooted for. His brand was reliability, until it shattered in a single moment. That moment came at the 94th Academy Awards in 2022, when Smith walked on stage and slapped comedian Chris Rock during a live broadcast. The incident, triggered by a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, stunned viewers worldwide. What should have been the crowning achievement of his career, winning Best Actor for King Richard, became a turning point defined by outrage. Public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Critics labeled the act violent and entitled, arguing that Smith's response revealed a darker side long hidden beneath his polished image. The Academy banned him from attending the Oscars for 10 years. Projects stalled. Debate exploded across media platforms, reframing his legacy overnight. Supporters defended Smith as a man pushed beyond his limits, pointing to years of public scrutiny over his marriage and personal life. Detractors saw something else, a celebrity who believed rules did not apply to him. In the court of public opinion, intent mattered less than optics. Will Smith's descent into widespread dislike was not built on a pattern of misconduct, but on the collapse of trust. He had been Hollywood's safest bet, and when that illusion broke, disappointment turned into resentment. His story proves a harsh truth of fame. Admiration is conditional, and once broken, it may never fully return. Ivanka Trump. Ivanka Trump's public image once blended fashion, wealth, and aspirational branding. As a businesswoman and model with strong ties to elite social circles, she moved easily between New York high society and celebrity culture. Her polished presence on red carpets and magazine covers positioned her as a symbol of modern luxury until politics transformed perception entirely. Ivanka's role as a senior advisor during her father, Donald Trump's presidency, marked a dramatic shift. With no formal political background, she and her husband Jared Kushner were entrusted with sweeping influence over policy and international diplomacy. To critics, this appointment embodied nepotism at its most blatant, privilege elevated to power without accountability. Public resentment intensified as reports emerged questioning her effectiveness, conflicts of interest, and continued business activity while in government. Her carefully maintained image of neutrality and elegance clashed with the realities of political decision-making, especially during moments of national crisis. Silence during controversial events was interpreted not as restraint, but as complicity. In Hollywood-adjacent circles, where image management is an art, Ivanka's transformation from socialite to political figure proved irreversible. Former admiration curdled into distrust. Fashion brands distanced themselves. Invitations disappeared. What once seemed aspirational became polarizing. Ivanka Trump is not hated for talent or lack thereof, but for what she represents. Inherited power repackaged as merit. Her story highlights a broader cultural reckoning with privilege, influence, and visibility. In a world increasingly skeptical of elite insulation, Ivanka became a symbol of everything many believe should no longer be rewarded. Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner never built his public identity through film, music, or performance. Yet his name became inseparable from celebrity culture through proximity to wealth, politics, and power. Married to Ivanka Trump, Kushner moved from real estate and publishing into one of the most influential roles in modern American government almost overnight. For many observers, that transition marked the beginning of widespread resentment. As a senior advisor during Donald Trump's presidency, Kushner was tasked with responsibilities that typically require decades of experience: Middle East diplomacy, criminal justice reform, and pandemic response coordination. Critics questioned not only his qualifications, but the mechanism that placed him there. Nepotism became the defining accusation. To the public, Kushner represented elite insulation, power granted by lineage rather than merit. The backlash intensified as reports emerged about conflicts of interest, limited transparency, and mixed outcomes from his initiatives. While supporters argued that Kushner operated quietly and avoided public grandstanding, detractors saw silence as avoidance rather than competence. His reserved demeanor, once perceived as professionalism, began to read as detachment. Hollywood-adjacent audiences, particularly those critical of entrenched privilege, turned sharply against him. Kushner's image shifted from discreet businessman to emblem of unearned authority. Even after leaving public office, scrutiny followed, especially regarding foreign investment ties and continued access to global power networks. Jared Kushner is disliked not because he sought attention, but because he wielded influence without accountability in the public eye. In a culture increasingly skeptical of closed systems, his story became a reminder that invisibility does not absolve responsibility, and that power without legitimacy can provoke just as much resentment as fame. Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway's backlash did not come from scandal, crime, or controversy. It came from something far stranger: public irritation. Rising to fame through roles in The Princess Diaries and The Devil Wears Prada, Hathaway was widely regarded as talented, hardworking, and inoffensive. Her career trajectory followed the textbook Hollywood ascent, until audiences abruptly turned on her. The phenomenon peaked around her Oscar win for Les Miserables in 2013. Instead of celebration, her awards season presence triggered what media outlets dubbed Hatha-hate. Critics dissected her speeches, facial expressions, and demeanor, accusing her of being overly polished, insincere, and desperate for approval. Nothing she did was technically wrong, yet everything was scrutinized. Unlike other hated figures, Hathaway's backlash was rooted in perception rather than action. She was criticized for seeming too rehearsed in an industry that prizes authenticity, even if that authenticity is performative. The irony was brutal. Her professionalism became evidence against her. Social media amplified the resentment, turning subtle annoyance into cultural momentum. Hathaway became a symbol of how quickly admiration can flip when audiences feel emotionally manipulated, even without cause. Importantly, she never responded with hostility or controversy. She continued working, stepped back from visibility, and allowed the noise to pass. In later years, public sentiment softened, and her performances regained respect. Yet her inclusion on lists of Hollywood's most disliked stars remains instructive. Anne Hathaway's story proves that in fame, being flawless can be just as dangerous as being flawed. Sometimes the public doesn't punish failure, they punish discomfort. Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow's transformation from acclaimed actress to one of Hollywood's most criticized figures is a case study in how perception can eclipse talent. In the late 1990s, Paltrow stood at the top of the industry, winning an Academy Award and starring in prestige films that cemented her reputation as refined and intelligent. But as her acting career slowed, she pivoted toward lifestyle branding, a decision that would permanently reshape her public image. The launch of her company Goop marked the beginning of widespread backlash. Marketed as a wellness and luxury platform, Goop promoted products and practices that critics labeled pseudoscientific, overpriced, or potentially harmful. Items such as jade eggs, detox cleanses, and alternative health claims sparked ridicule from medical professionals and the public alike. What Paltrow framed as empowerment was often received as irresponsibility. Her personal commentary added fuel to the fire. Interviews in which she compared her professional struggles to the hardships faced by people in far more dangerous professions reinforced the perception that she was profoundly out of touch. To many, Paltrow became the embodiment of elite insulation, wealthy, detached, and unaware of how her words landed. Despite the criticism, Goop grew into a company valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, and Paltrow remained unapologetic. That refusal to retreat only deepened resentment. For detractors, she was no longer an actress or entrepreneur, but a symbol of privilege repackaged as enlightenment. Gwyneth Paltrow is disliked not because she failed, but because she succeeded while appearing disconnected from reality. Her story illustrates a modern truth of fame. Expertise is no longer assumed, and confidence without accountability can provoke lasting disdain. Madonna. Madonna's legacy is inseparable from controversy. From the beginning of her career, she built fame by challenging norms around sexuality, religion, and power. In the 1980s and 1990s, that defiance made her a cultural icon. She controlled her image, her sound, and her narrative in ways few artists ever achieved. But over time, rebellion turned into exhaustion for audiences and critics alike. As Madonna aged, the backlash shifted in tone. What was once celebrated as fearless reinvention began to be framed as desperation. Critics accused her of clinging to relevance through shock rather than substance, pointing to provocative performances, cosmetic surgery rumors, and increasingly erratic social media behavior. Instead of being praised for longevity, she was scrutinized for refusing to fade quietly. Her reputation for harsh treatment of collaborators and perceived arrogance compounded the dislike. Stories of demanding behavior reinforce the image of an artist unwilling to adapt to changing expectations. In an industry that often punishes women for aging, Madonna found herself trapped in a paradox, criticized for changing too much and for not stepping aside. Supporters argue that Madonna is held to standards never applied to male peers, and that her resistance to invisibility is itself an act of defiance. Critics counter that influence does not excuse self-indulgence. The divide remains sharp. Madonna is hated not because she lacks impact, but because she refuses restraint. Her career exposes an uncomfortable question Hollywood still avoids. Who gets to remain visible, and on whose terms? By never asking permission, Madonna ensured her immortality and her polarization. Kanye West. Kanye West's fall from cultural hero to one of the most hated figures in entertainment is among the most dramatic in modern history. Early in his career, Kanye was widely celebrated as a visionary, an artist who reshaped hip-hop, fashion, and pop culture with innovation and confidence. Albums like The College Dropout and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy earned critical acclaim and commercial dominance, placing him among the most influential artists of his generation. The backlash did not begin with his music, but with his behavior. The 2009 MTV Video Music Awards interruption of Taylor Swift marked the first major fracture in public trust. What many dismissed as arrogance soon became pattern. Kanye's increasingly erratic public statements, impulsive interviews, and social media outbursts reframed him from provocateur to liability. In later years, the controversy escalated. His outspoken political stances, praise for authoritarian figures, and repeated anti-Semitic remarks crossed a line that even longtime supporters could not defend. Major corporations severed partnerships, including Adidas, costing him billions in estimated net worth. For many, this was no longer about artistic freedom, it was about harm. Mental health discussions followed, with some urging compassion and others arguing accountability must come first. The public debate became polarized: genius versus responsibility, illness versus consequence. Kanye's refusal to apologize meaningfully only intensified resentment. Today, Kanye West is hated not because his talent disappeared, but because his voice overshadowed his work. He became an example of how unchecked influence can rot admiration into anger. In a culture that once amplified him, Kanye ultimately became his own loudest undoing. Jared Leto. Jared Leto's reputation collapse is rooted not in failure, but in discomfort. An Academy Award-winning actor and frontman of 30 Seconds to Mars, Leto built his career on intensity and transformation. His performances were praised for depth and risk, until his off-screen conduct began eclipsing the work itself. The turning point came with his approach to method acting. Reports from the set of Suicide Squad describe behavior that many colleagues found disturbing rather than immersive. Alleged pranks, including sending inappropriate items to castmates, shifted perception from dedication to unprofessionalism. Instead of admiration, his commitment provoked unease. Beyond film sets, Leto faced growing scrutiny over allegations involving young fans and inappropriate dynamics within his music community. While not all claims resulted in legal action, the volume and consistency of accusations created lasting suspicion. In the court of public opinion, doubt was enough. Interviews did little to soften his image. Leto's tone was often perceived as dismissive or self-important, reinforcing the idea that he viewed himself above criticism. What once read as eccentric artistry began to feel like ego unchecked by boundaries. Despite continued success in music and acting, Leto's name increasingly appears on lists of Hollywood's most disliked figures. His story highlights a modern reality: talent no longer shields behavior. Audiences are less willing to separate performance from conduct. Jared Leto is disliked not because he lacks ability, but because his intensity crossed into territory people no longer feel comfortable excusing. In an industry redefining accountability, discomfort has become disqualified. Amber Heard. Amber Heard's rise and collapse in Hollywood did not unfold on movie screens, but in courtrooms and live streams watched by millions. Once positioned as a promising actress with mainstream visibility through films like Aquaman, Heard's career trajectory changed irrevocably following her highly publicized legal battles with former husband Johnny Depp. The controversy began with mutual allegations of abuse, first raised publicly in the context of divorce proceedings, and later amplified through defamation lawsuits. What followed was unprecedented, a courtroom trial that became global entertainment. Clips, memes, and commentary flooded social media, transforming legal testimony into viral spectacle. Public opinions shifted rapidly and decisively against Heard. Although the legal outcomes varied across jurisdictions, The Virginia defamation trial in 2022 proved culturally decisive. Jurors found in Depp's favor on most claims. And while the case did not determine criminal guilt, it reshaped public perception. Heard was widely accused of dishonesty and manipulation, labels that stuck regardless of nuance or legal complexity. The backlash was relentless. Online harassment escalated. Petitions demanding her removal from film projects gathered millions of signatures. Her acting career stalled, and industry support largely evaporated. To many, she became less an actress than a symbol of mistrust, false narratives, and the dangers of public accusation. Importantly, Heard maintains her version of events and has continued to state that the trial reflected a failure of public understanding rather than truth. Yet in the court of popular culture, verdicts are emotional, not legal. Amber Heard's place among Hollywood's most hated figures is rooted not only in controversy, but in how modern media collapses complexity into sides. Her story demonstrates how reputation can be destroyed not by conviction, but by consensus. Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey was once regarded as one of the most formidable actors of his generation. With acclaimed performances in The Usual Suspects, American Beauty, and House of Cards, he embodied authority, intelligence, and control. That image disintegrated almost overnight when multiple men publicly accused him of sexual misconduct beginning in 2017. The allegations emerged during the height of the #MeToo movement, placing Spacey at the center of a cultural reckoning. Studios acted swiftly. Netflix severed ties, removing him from House of Cards. Completed films digitally replaced him. Hollywood closed its doors with unusual speed, signaling zero tolerance regardless of legal outcomes. Spacey denied wrongdoing and later faced criminal and civil proceedings. Some cases were dismissed, others ended without conviction. However, legal resolution did little to repair public trust. His unconventional responses, including cryptic video monologues delivered in character, were widely criticized and perceived as evasive rather than remorseful. For audiences, the distinction between accusation and guilt blurred. Spacey's on-screen personas, once admired, were reinterpreted through a darker lens. His artistry became inseparable from the allegations, rendering rewatching his work uncomfortable for many viewers. Kevin Spacey's downfall illustrates a harsh, modern reality. Cultural judgment moves faster than courts. Even absent convictions, reputations can be permanently destroyed when trust collapses. He remains one of Hollywood's most hated figures, not because of a verdict, but because belief shifted, and belief, once lost, rarely returns. O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was once one of the most admired figures in American popular culture. A Hall of Fame football player, charismatic sports commentator, and recognizable Hollywood actor, he embodied success across sports and entertainment. That image collapsed in 1994 when Simpson was charged with the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. The ensuing trial became one of the most watched legal events in modern history. In 1995, Simpson was acquitted in criminal court, a verdict that split the nation and ignited intense debate about race, celebrity, and justice. For many viewers, the decision did not resolve doubt, it deepened it. The civil trial that followed found Simpson liable for wrongful death, reinforcing the belief among critics that legal outcomes did not equal moral clarity. Public perception hardened over time. Simpson's infamous televised police chase, his continued media appearances, and the later publication of If I Did It, a book widely viewed as provocative and disturbing, further damaged his reputation. Even those who once defended him struggled to reconcile his conduct with claims of innocence. In 2007, Simpson was convicted of armed robbery and kidnapping in an unrelated Las Vegas case, receiving a lengthy prison sentence. That conviction cemented his fall from grace and reframed earlier controversies in the public mind. O.J. Simpson became hated not solely because of verdicts, but because trust evaporated. His story illustrates how celebrity can complicate justice and how acquittal does not guarantee acceptance. Once revered, he is now remembered as a symbol of how fame can collide with accountability and lose. Chris Brown. Chris Brown entered the music industry as a teenage phenomenon, praised for his vocals, athletic dancing, and hit-making potential. By the late 2000s, he was positioned as one of pop music's most promising stars. That trajectory changed dramatically in 2009 after he assaulted then-partner Rihanna, an incident documented by court records and photographs that shocked the public. Brown pleaded guilty to felony assault and received probation. The legal resolution did not end the backlash. For many, the severity of the incident and its visibility made forgiveness difficult. Subsequent legal troubles, public altercations, and volatile behavior reinforced the perception of a pattern rather than a single mistake. Despite continued commercial success and a loyal fan base, Brown's reputation never recovered broadly. Each comeback attempt reignited debate. Can talent outweigh harm, and does accountability include the possibility of redemption? Supporters argued personal growth and time served. Critics countered that repeated controversies undermine claims of change. The music industry's willingness to platform Brown further polarized audiences. Collaborations and chart success contrasted sharply with public condemnation, creating a tension between popularity and principle. Chris Brown is hated not because his talent vanished, but because violence redefined his legacy. His career raises unresolved questions about responsibility, forgiveness, and where society draws the line between artistic achievement and personal conduct. In that unresolved space, resentment continues to thrive. James Franco. James Franco once occupied a rare space in Hollywood, a star who blended mainstream success with intellectual credibility. With acclaimed performances in films like 127 Hours and Milk, alongside roles in popular comedies, Franco cultivated the image of a versatile artist. He taught classes, directed indie projects, and positioned himself as a thinker in an industry often criticized for superficiality. That carefully built persona would ultimately contribute to his downfall. The collapse began when multiple women accused Franco of sexual misconduct, particularly involving students from his acting school. The allegations described a troubling imbalance of power, where professional opportunities were allegedly tied to inappropriate behavior. While Franco denied wrongdoing, the accusations resonated strongly in the context of the #MeToo movement, where patterns of exploitation were being publicly confronted. In 2021, Franco reached a settlement in a civil lawsuit without admitting guilt. Though not a criminal conviction, the resolution reinforced public skepticism. Hollywood responded decisively. Projects vanished, collaborators distanced themselves, and Franco's once frequent screen presence evaporated. His longtime creative partner Seth Rogen publicly stated he would no longer work with him, a symbolic rupture that underscored the industry's shift. What made Franco's fall especially severe was the contrast between image and accusation. He was not perceived as reckless or openly predatory, but as thoughtful and self-aware. When that perception shattered, disappointment hardened into resentment. James Franco is hated not because he lacked talent, but because his cultivated identity collapsed under scrutiny. His story reflects a broader cultural reckoning. Intelligence and artistry no longer excuse misuse of power. In Hollywood today, credibility is fragile, and once lost, rarely restored. Megan Fox. Megan Fox's backlash began at the height of her success. Catapulted to fame by Transformers in 2007, she became one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood almost overnight. Her appearance dominated media coverage, often reducing her to spectacle rather than performer. But when Fox spoke openly about her experiences, the industry response was swift and unforgiving. In interviews, Fox criticized director Michael Bay's on-set behavior, comparing his management style to authoritarianism. Rather than sparking accountability, her comments resulted in professional exile. She was removed from the Transformers franchise, and stories portraying her as difficult and ungrateful spread quickly. Instead of sympathy, Fox faced ridicule. Public resentment followed. She was labeled arrogant, shallow, and irresponsible. Accusations rarely supported by concrete evidence. The media framed her confidence as attitude and her refusal to conform as entitlement. Offers dwindled. Mockery replaced admiration. In an industry that often rewards silence, Fox's candor became her liability. Years later, Fox reframed her experience, describing a culture of misogyny and objectification that punished young women for asserting boundaries. As conversations around sexism evolved, public perception softened. Many reevaluated her treatment as disproportionate and unjust. Still, the damage lingered. Megan Fox remains a polarizing figure, not because of scandal or crime, but because she challenged power before the industry was ready to listen. Her story exposes a harsh truth. In Hollywood, being outspoken can be more dangerous than being wrong. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf's career began as a textbook Hollywood success story. A child star on Disney Channel, he transitioned seamlessly into blockbuster cinema with the Transformers franchise, becoming one of the most recognizable young actors of his generation. Unlike many former child actors, LaBeouf possessed raw intensity and range, earning critical praise in films such as Fury and Honey Boy. Yet as his performances grew stronger, his public image unraveled. The backlash against LaBeouf emerged gradually through a series of erratic behaviors. Public arrests, disorderly conduct incidents, and strange artistic stunts blurred the line between experimentation and instability. What some initially dismissed as eccentricity began to resemble a pattern of self-sabotage. His plagiarism scandal, in which he admitted to copying other artists' work, further damaged his credibility. The most serious turning point came when former partners accused LaBeouf of emotional and physical abuse. Lawsuits and public statements described controlling and violent behavior, allegations LaBeouf later acknowledged in part, stating he had harmed people close to him. While not all claims resulted in criminal convictions, the admissions themselves reshaped public perception. Hollywood reacted decisively. Roles were lost, collaborators withdrew. LaBeouf entered rehabilitation and publicly addressed his struggles with addiction and anger, seeking accountability rather than denial. Still, public trust proved difficult to rebuild. Shia LaBeouf is hated not because he lacked talent, but because his talent became inseparable from harm. His story reflects a broader discomfort with excusing destructive behavior in the name of artistry. In an era redefining accountability, brilliance alone is no longer enough to earn forgiveness. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen lived the Hollywood fantasy louder than almost anyone. As the star of 2.5 Men, he became one of the highest-paid actors in television history, known for effortless charisma and comic timing. For years, audiences embraced his rebellious charm, viewing his off-screen excess as part of the persona. That tolerance eventually ran out. Sheen's downfall unfolded publicly and relentlessly. His struggles with substance abuse escalated into media spectacles marked by erratic interviews, verbal attacks on colleagues, and declarations of invincibility. Catchphrases like "winning" became shorthand for chaos rather than confidence. Networks and studios lost patience, and his lucrative television career collapsed in full view of the public. The backlash deepened when Sheen revealed he was HIV positive, admitting he had concealed the diagnosis for years while continuing relationships. The revelation sparked outrage, with critics accusing him of recklessness and endangerment. What once seemed like personal self-destruction now carried moral weight. While Sheen later sought treatment and expressed remorse, public sympathy was limited. His history of volatility overshadowed attempts at rehabilitation. Former fans no longer saw a charming rebel, but a cautionary example of unchecked privilege and denial. Charlie Sheen is hated not because he failed quietly, but because he imploded loudly. His story demonstrates how fame can delay consequences, but never eliminate them. In the end, excess consumed what talent built, leaving behind a legacy defined less by laughter and more by collapse. Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl's backlash did not begin with scandal, crime, or controversy in the traditional sense. It began with words. Rising to prominence through Grey's Anatomy, Heigl quickly became one of television's most recognizable faces, earning awards and praise for her performances. Her transition to film appeared equally promising, with romantic comedies like Knocked Up achieving commercial success and cementing her as a bankable star. The turning point came when Heigl publicly criticized Knocked Up, describing aspects of the film as sexist and expressing discomfort with how female characters were portrayed. While some applauded her candor, industry insiders reacted harshly. Soon after, she withdrew her name from Emmy consideration for Grey's Anatomy, stating she did not feel her material deserved nomination. The statement was interpreted not as humility, but as arrogance. Behind the scenes, a damaging reputation formed. Reports circulated that Heigl was difficult to work with, ungrateful, and dismissive of collaborators. Whether fair or exaggerated, the perception spread quickly in an industry that values discretion. Opportunities dwindled, casting offers slowed, Hollywood's enthusiasm cooled almost overnight. Public opinion followed suit. Once seen as relatable and charming, Heigl became a symbol of entitlement in media narratives. Her attempts to clarify or soften earlier comments did little to reverse the damage. In time, she stepped back from the spotlight, later acknowledging mistakes in how she expressed herself. Katherine Heigl is disliked not because she lacked talent, but because she challenged expectations in a system that rewards silence. Her story illustrates how quickly Hollywood can turn on those who speak openly, even when their criticism reflects genuine discomfort. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan's fall from grace is one of Hollywood's most visible cautionary tales. As a child actor, she showed remarkable range, winning audiences with films like The Parent Trap and later defining a generation with Mean Girls. By her early 20s, Lohan was both critically acclaimed and commercially successful, positioned as one of the industry's brightest young stars. Then came the unraveling. Substance abuse issues, repeated arrests, probation violations, and highly publicized rehab stints overtook her professional achievements. Tabloids chronicled every misstep, turning her personal struggles into spectacle. Casting directors grew wary, studios questioned her reliability, talent gave way to liability. What deepened resentment was not only the behavior, but the perceived lack of accountability. Reports describe missed shoots, unprofessional conduct, and defiance toward court orders. Public sympathy slowly eroded as incidents piled up. Once rooted goodwill transformed into frustration. Lohan became shorthand for wasted potential. Each attempted comeback was overshadowed by skepticism, and every new headline reinforced the belief that she could not escape the cycle. While later years brought moments of stability and reflection, the damage to her reputation proved long-lasting. Lindsay Lohan is hated not because she failed young, but because her decline played out relentlessly in public view. Her story underscores how fame can amplify vulnerability and how Hollywood rarely forgives those who lose control under its glare. Mel Gibson. For decades, Mel Gibson stood among Hollywood's most respected figures. As both actor and director, he delivered box office success and critical acclaim through films like Braveheart, Lethal Weapon, and The Passion of the Christ. His screen presence conveyed intensity and authority, and his off-screen reputation once reflected professionalism and creative ambition. That image unraveled through a series of incidents that permanently altered how audiences perceived him. The first major fracture came with a drunk driving arrest in 2006. During the incident, Gibson launched into an anti-Semitic tirade recorded in police reports, shocking fans and industry peers alike. What might have been dismissed as a moment of intoxicated recklessness instead exposed attitudes many found deeply disturbing. Apologies followed, but skepticism remained. The backlash intensified years later when audio recordings surfaced during a custody dispute with his former partner. The tapes included racist language, misogynistic insults, and violent threats. Public reaction was swift and severe. Hollywood distanced itself, projects disappeared, and Gibson's career stalled. Though he later returned to directing with Hacksaw Ridge, earning renewed respect in some circles, the damage never fully healed. For many viewers, his talent could no longer be separated from his words. Each attempted comeback reignited debate about accountability, forgiveness, and whether professional excellence can outweigh personal conduct. Mel Gibson is hated not because he failed artistically, but because his behavior shattered trust. His story reflects a shift in cultural expectations. Success no longer insulates individuals from the consequences of prejudice. In Hollywood's evolving moral landscape, legacy is not defined solely by achievement, but by how one wields power when no cameras are rolling. Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski's name occupies one of the most troubling spaces in film history. Celebrated as a master filmmaker behind works like Chinatown and The Pianist, Polanski earned international acclaim and major awards for his craft. Yet his artistic legacy is inseparable from a criminal case that has defined his public image for more than 4 decades. In 1977, Polanski was charged with the sexual assault of a 13-year-old girl. He pleaded guilty to unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor as part of a plea agreement. Before sentencing, Polanski fled the United States and has never returned, living in Europe while remaining a fugitive under U.S. law. That decision transformed admiration into outrage. Despite his legal status, Polanski continued making films and receiving awards abroad, including an Academy Award in 2003. Each honor reignited fierce debate. Supporters argued for separating art from artist. Critics countered that continued celebration signaled tolerance for abuse of power. Public sentiment increasingly favored the latter view. Polanski's case became emblematic of Hollywood's historical willingness to protect influential figures. Petitions, protests, and renewed scrutiny followed each attempt at recognition. While some industry figures defended him, public backlash grew stronger with time, not weaker. Roman Polanski is hated not because his talent is disputed, but because accountability was avoided. His story forces an uncomfortable question: can brilliance coexist with impunity? For many, the answer is no. In that refusal lies the enduring anger that defines his legacy. Harvey Weinstein. For decades, Harvey Weinstein was one of the most feared and influential figures in Hollywood. As the co-founder of Miramax and later the Weinstein Company, he played a central role in shaping modern cinema. His backing could turn independent films into Oscar winners, and his approval often meant the difference between obscurity and stardom. Publicly, Weinstein was celebrated as a kingmaker. Privately, he wielded power in ways that would eventually destroy his legacy. In 2017, investigative reports published by the New York Times and the New Yorker revealed a pattern of sexual harassment, assault, and abuse allegations spanning decades. Dozens of women, actors, assistants, and industry professionals came forward with strikingly similar accounts. They described a system built on intimidation, career threats, and enforced silence, enabled by non-disclosure agreements and institutional complicity. The revelations sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Weinstein was fired from his own company, expelled from professional organizations, and became the most prominent figure associated with the hashtag #MeToo movement. What made the backlash so severe was not only the scale of the accusations, but how long they had been hidden in plain sight. Many questioned how an entire industry could have known and done nothing. In court, Weinstein faced criminal charges and was convicted, receiving a lengthy prison sentence. Appeals and legal proceedings followed, but public perception had already crystallized. His name became synonymous with predation, abuse of power, and systemic failure. Harvey Weinstein is hated not merely for his crimes, but for what they revealed. He exposed how influence can protect wrongdoing and how fear can be normalized as business practice. His downfall marked a turning point, forcing Hollywood to confront its own silence. In the end, Weinstein did not fall alone. He took an illusion of innocence with him. The names on this list won't fade quietly. Some were punished too harshly, others not nearly enough. Hollywood moves on, but the damage remains. Careers ended, victims unheard, audiences divided. So here's the real question. Does talent earn mercy, or does power simply delay consequences? And if public hatred becomes the judge, who decides when redemption is allowed? Share your opinion in the comments. Which story angered you the most, and which one deserves a second look? Follow and stay curious. This is Black Excellence Legends, and the debate is far from over.